We're back. Season 8, Episode 22. What Lies Beneath? This is the episode in which the young six, the student six, whatever they're called, are like, "Wah, and then they go down under the tree, and the tree itself tests them, and by the way, the tree has a mind? Which, I mean, makes sense. It is the GM, after all. We've talked about the map so much, this doesn't really surprise me. Nevertheless, the tree has a mind. Terrifying. And decides to be like, "I shall fix you all." And they're like, "No, please don't fix us." And we're like, "We will be fixed." There's a lot of spiders, and then they win the end. Also, there's totally nothing going on with Cozy Glow. I do actually act. We had a whole discussion about the tree not having a true consciousness. I actually kind of stand by my earlier statements, though, because based on this episode and what I've seen before, I think I agree with what Raskor just said in chat. I think the tree is developing. I think we're seeing some droid effect here. Remember, droid effect does not mean you are sentient and sapient. It means you have the three possibilities, the three requirements to grow into sentience and sapience. And I think that's what we're seeing. I will admit, that is still a little bit surprising to me. Experience and interactions? Yep, that makes sense. Time and development? Yep, that makes sense. But the third and most critical of the three things that is required for droid effect to be true is having sufficient complexity in intellect to comprehend and develop and to grow. This, I didn't think the tree had this. Obviously it does, because it has demonstrated it. So that's interesting. I hope they do something with that in the future, and I know they will, because holy crap, that last shot, am I right? Anyways, let's build up to this a little bit. So, we see the friendship's effects on the course of history. Can I just say that that's an awesome topic for I would love to do a piece on that. That actually applies in real life, too. The nature of coordination and cooperation and its impact on history, on what we just talked last episode about the difference between the survivalist period, the tribal period, if you will, and the civilization period, and how wildly different these two periods are because of what civilization has brought. Good and bad, of course. Of course, in Equestria it's mostly good, but even in real life, I would like to say we are still in a net positive, my opinion. I know some people disagree with that, and that's fine. But I'd like to think that, you know, we are still at a net positive for all the things that have been brought because of coordination and cooperation, because of what we individuals have done for millennia, cooperating, interacting, and developing, and doing things regardless of self-interest, which has led to what we now call society. Just food for thought. But anyways, moving on. Now you're probably thinking, Lore, wait, aren't you going to sit and talk for like 15 minutes about how friendship has affected equestrian history? No, I've already done that. I had a huge discussion about that with regards to Star Swirl all the way back at the beginning of the season. Yeah, exactly, Ross. Not a hard choice. I must be bold. I mean, ignoring the obvious pragmatic, practical things like, you know, sanity, sanitation. Just look back only 1 century. Just go to the early 1900s, and what we have is literal sewage in the streets situation. Yeah, plumbing, clean water to drink. You know, like, I mean, come on. Yeah, never mind child labor being much safer than it used to be. And yeah, it's just, the list is gargantuan. The list is absolutely huge. I'm not even talking about things like the fact that you're watching me talk to a piece of metal and plastic on top of my monitor in my room with my lighting and my air conditioning, so that I can try and share thoughts and share enthusiasm about things that are completely intangible, that have nothing to do with our survival. And I could do this for a living. I can eat these carrots right here because you all are so awesome that you literally give me money so that I can keep doing this. Like, none of this would be possible 20 years ago. Never mind 100. I got in almost at the ground floor of this kind of thing, too. It's worth noting. I've been doing this for over 10 years, for God's sakes. Think about that for a second. Anyways, moving on. So, oh yeah, 1,000 years ago. Ooh, yeah, no. There's a comment I've heard several times. It boils down to, I'd rather be a commoner now than a king 1,000 years ago. And yeah, I'm with you on that one. And yeah, food preservation, that's another thing. That's another thing that we've only really gotten going in the last century or so. I mean, we used to have salt, and, you know, we could dry out foods. We had techniques, of course, but there's a reason so many herbs and spices were so valuable throughout the course of human history. It's because they could cover up the taste of food that's going bad, among other things. Anyway, sorry, I don't mean to get so off topic on this, but again, this is a legitimately fascinating aspect of both this show and real life. So I think that's a cool topic, and it just made my mind explode, as it often does in this show. So, then we have Silverstream, who is like, oh man, I love finding out how sinks work. That's me. Can I just say that? I love learning. It almost doesn't matter what. I love learning how things work and why things work. It's probably one of the biggest passions I have, is just learning in general. That's been true since I was a kid. That is certainly true now. And so yeah, Silverstream just been, this is so cool, it's something new. And of course it's relevant to this episode in particular, because what she's doing is she is expressing the freedom she has to do what she wants because she wants to. Remember that, it's going to come up in a minute. So, then there's Cozy Glow. Hi, Cozy Glow. How are you? If I hadn't been, you know, spoiled that Cozy Glow was going to be a major character going forward, this episode would have codified that. Obviously, she's made little appearances as background NPCs, but she is, once again, just like she was in her last episode, overtly manipulative here, in a very well-written way. Because when I say overtly manipulative, I mean in the way that works in real life. I forget what the actual psychological term is, but she does a thing where she will compliment you, or I'm saying this, she will insult you by complimenting you. That's the first thing she does, is she insults them by complimenting them to try and crack their friendship apart. And she states that she wants to do this because she wants to get in on the group, which I don't believe at all, because I think she wanted an in to the tree, but that's because of the last thing. She is obviously up to something, and yeah, I once again reiterate my point that she comes across as a sociopath. Not as an insult, as a statement of fact. Someone who lacks empathy and is simply operating at a purely intellectual level. Everything she does is very clearly and deliberately designed. I forgot to put the announcement in Discord. Clearly and deliberately designed to manipulate other people by preying on and playing to their empathy. But we'll come more to that in a bit. For now, we cut to the chunk of crystal, which has moved the grate aside. Now, in my notes, as soon as Twilight showed up, my first thing I wrote down was, that's totally the tree. And I had all sorts of thoughts, because I'm like, wait, if that's the tree, hang on. And then I just sat and processed that for a bit until we got to the point where the tree really starts talking to them, and it's like, okay. I do like how it's not quite a subtle thing, but it's not a very overt thing. It's a medium subtle thing. The tree's Twilight is animated differently than regular Twilight. In fact, in many ways, she's animated like Season 1 Twilight, right? She's still there, she's still moving, but there's a lot less subtlety or nuance. Her expression doesn't really change. Her eyes don't really do much. You know, there's not the little extra lines or little tidbits of the face moving. It's just, she looks almost like a doll, is actually how I would describe that. Like someone was just holding up a puppet, and therefore it doesn't have the pieces to move. It only has its 5 basic parts, right? Yeah, simulacra. So, ironically, doing this kind of bad animation is very good animation in this case, so credit where that is. You know I like to gush about the animation and technical side of this show. This is a great example of that. Then, they're all shoved off to their crystals, and we get like a 1-second shot of each of them in their own little crystal areas. And in that first second, we could already see what all of them are going to be afraid of. Immediately. Ocellus is obviously back in the hive. Yona is obviously in a place covered with spider webs. Silverstream is obviously in a place that is indicative of her home, and Gallus is obviously in a place that is very cloistered. Sandbar is a little bit, but each one of them, you just get that immediate flash of, okay, this is what we're going to. Okay, I'm with it. That's a good way to put that, Darth Vader, like a VTuber. Oh, and Smolder, yeah, sorry, Smolders was there too. Sorry. There's a lot to cover in this episode. I have a lot of notes, so hopefully I'll be able to catch all of this, because let's go down the list, shall we? So first we see the Storm King, and of course that makes perfect sense. Anybody who was currently alive was probably alive during the Storm King's reign. Almost any one of the, whatever the dual species is called right now, would probably be someone who at least existed underneath that rule. Okay, so that tracks. Gallus is freaked out about what is effectively claustrophobia, which makes sense for someone who can freaking fly. Yeah, exactly, Trathan. In fact, it's possible, since it's only been a relatively short period of time, like probably less than a year, anybody who... only the beginnings of babies are probably now existing who didn't live into the Storm King's reign. So anybody who can talk, right? Anyways. So then we have bugs. I had a note here that any large-haired, long-haired creature would be pretty anti-bugs. Trust me. I know I don't look like I have long hair now, but I used to have quite a mane, and bugs can suck. But anyways. And then we see the changeling one. Now this is when things get interesting. We're mostly just getting snippets of each one, and I will go in more in depth to each of these, don't worry. But we just get a little snippets. Smolder has the positivity cuteness freakout, haha. But that's not actually what she's afraid of. The changeling one, by contrast, is exactly what she's afraid of. Don't worry, your majesty. We will go and suck out all the love out of the ponies. Right. It's okay, Darth Mandora, they're bugs. So, they're bugs. They must be killed like bugs. So then, we cut to Sandbar. Now, Sandbar is actually my favorite fear. As I will comment later in my notes, we could do an entire episode just around Sandbar's fear. Sandbar's fear is the Hufflepuff fear. Now, for those of you who don't watch Harry Potter or read Harry Potter, let me clarify that a little bit. The Hufflepuff is someone who's reliable, dependable, and normal. They're good people. They're good people to have around. They're good people to have as friends. They're good people to have on your workforce or in your army or in your office or wherever. But they're normal. They are not exceptional. They are not exaggerating. They don't get all the attention. They don't get all the praise. They are ordinary. Now, yeah, your average Joe, or Stygian, as Ross points out. And that is Sandbar's fear. That's bloody subtle. So, yeah, there's an entire trope about it, Darth Mandora. So let's move on a little bit. So we've got our quick introduction here. Yes, yeah, exactly, Lord Harriman. I fear when all opportunities for adventure have passed. I forget the exact quote, but I know the one you're talking about. So, I gotta look that quote up now, because that's a great quote. What's her name? I can't remember her name. What's her name? Female characters. Let's see if I can find it before someone says it. Eowyn. Okay, there we go. Eowyn. Well, let's see if I can find it. Ah, this is the book. Oh, well. Damn it, it's like there's the beginning of the quote here. I fear not death or pain, I fear a cage. But then it cuts off. The rest of the quote is the important part. Here we go. Hang on, I think I found it. A cage to stay behind bars until use and old age accept them, and all chance of valor has gone beyond recall or desire. There you go. Great quote. Anyways, sorry. So, let's go down these a little bit more in specifics. So we got the Storm King. So yeah, Sandbar is offered the chance to go and be him. He is needed. He is exceptional. I actually have a phrase for this. I call this the singularity of the one. You probably haven't heard me use that phrase a lot because you probably haven't read anything I've written because I haven't published any of it, but it's a phrase I use semi-frequently in my written works. You'll see it in the World of Lorecraft series when we get to the Legion stuff next year, because I wrote it into that story as well. The idea is the one hero, this one person who's going to save the day. For those of you familiar with Warcraft lore, Illidan. That's the singularity of the one. And that is exactly what Sandbar wants. Yes! I can be the hero. I can be the person, the face, the dude. I'm doing it. Let's do it. Yeah. Whoosh. Rohan. Yeah, exactly. He's loving it. You notice, while everyone else has a little bit of resistance to their fears, Sandbar falls for his immediately. He also takes the longest to fight his. Again, I think we could do an entire episode just on that, but moving on. So then we have Gallus. Now, Gallus has probably a really, I'd say one of the two most basic fears, but his is, of course, external. He has to confront his fear. He has to face his fear. He has to actually be in the state that he is afraid of and still operate. Remember, and I've said this so many times, and this episode gets this very right, it's not about not being afraid, it's about not letting your fear stop you. This is exactly what Gallus does. He is afraid. He has to have a level head. He has to think, operate, process, and maneuver his way through his situation. He figures out the puzzle while he is terrified. And that's brilliant. And yeah, they showed, speaking as someone who has some claustrophobic issues, not full tilt, don't have a full phobia, I was feeling that. The actor and the animation were doing an excellent job of selling what it feels like to just be crushed. To just not be able to move and not be able to, and it's just kind of crushing in on you. You can barely do anything, and you're just kind of, and you can't, after all, you just want to really stretch your legs out or really push your arms out, and you can't. And even just doing this is actually getting me, so I'm going to stop faking that because I have a very good imagination. Part of the reason I love not having the green screen behind me is because I am no longer as cloistered as I used to be. So he does a wonderful job of selling that terror. This might be a purple episode. I'm just going to give that away right now, if it's not obvious by my tone and my inflection and how much I'm getting into this. Next fear. Next one is smolder. This is beautiful. How many of you either are or have known someone who bashes X but secretly loves it or wants to be a part of that? I don't want to be one of the popular kids, or I don't want to be one of those things. I'm not into ponies. Yeah, I was about to say, Ross, I'm pretty sure there are MLP fans who bash MLP, but actually like the show, or want to like the show. This is a fairly common psychological thing, and you'll notice it is the exact inverse of Gallus's thing. Smolder's fear is 100% internal. A fear... Hang on, I wrote this down. I have the perfect... This is wonderful symmetry in this episode. The fear of the mental confinement. Gallus is afraid of physical confinement. Smolder is afraid of mental confinement. Of being ousted. Of being embarrassed. Of being ashamed. Of having to have that secret thing as, oh God, I don't want people to know that I secretly feel this way. That would be terrible. Now, and yeah, you're absolutely right, Darth Maduro. You're absolutely right. Speaking as someone who's been a Star Trek fan since the 80s, trust me, Star Trek's a lot more commonly accepted nowadays. It used to be a get you beat up on the schoolyard kind of a thing. Video games were that way too. And D&D, and honestly a lot of other things. Hell, I used to be into math. I shouldn't say used to be, I am currently still into, but you know what I mean. So, we've got fear of physical confinement, and we've got fear of mental confinement. Right next to each other, too, by the way, which is beautiful. Hang on. It gets even better. So, this moves to... hang on, so let me look down my notes. I'm going to do this in order, because this is good story structure. By the way, this one was written by Michael Vogel, who has given us a purple before. He gave us To Wear Him Back Again. He's also given us a blue, and a green, and a yellow, and an orange, and a red. He has hit the full spectrum. So, no predictiveness there. So, Yona. Now, Yona doesn't quite fit in the same way the others do, but her fear is very primal, and yet at the same time, very connected to her culture. Let's put this in the proper terminology. She is scared of those who are scared of her. She is scared of those who want to be her friends that she pushes away. Think about that for a second. Think about how very yak that is. Think about how many of her people have other yaks. We've already seen this exact thing in other yaks with Prince Rutherford. So this is a very cultural thing. Even though it's presented in a primal way, spiders, it's not a primal fear at all. That is a fear of cultural variance, essentially. I agree, Trathan. Yaks have gotten so much better since they were first showcased. Anyways, then we cut back to Sandbar. Sandbar is God, I love Sandbar's fear. I've already kind of discussed it. His fear is so much deeper seated. It's not something surface level. It's not something complex. It's not something primal. It's not something cultural. He fears absence. Sandbar fears what is not. He is not afraid of the fact that I just got a donation out of nowhere. Hang on, I don't even have that page up right now. Hang on a second. I wasn't ready for that. Hang on, wait. Aw. Well, thank you, Ect, very much. And I will definitely spend that on some carrots or maybe pizza. Thank you, Ect, very, very much. Always. If you want to put that towards something, please let me know. But yes, you'll notice how Sandbar shows no fear when confronted with his fears. You saw that, right? Because of course he is. Again, his fear is the absence. So what he is confronted with is the presence. He fears not being special. He fears not being unique. He fears this not being the singularity of the one. And so when someone offers that, he's like, yes! Because one of the greatest ways we showcase our fear is how we operate in its absence. Again, wonderfully, wonderfully well done with Sandbar. And yeah, notice how... I know this was probably not done on purpose. This is probably backloaded storytelling. But in almost every episode with Sandbar prior to now, you'll notice that he has been the one who immediately has the stories of the past exploits of pony history, mostly the stuff that's happened in the show, right there at the tip of his lips, ready to share to the others. Now, in most of the previous episodes, he has been doing this specifically to get the non-ponies up to speed, but with hindsight, we can see that he has had these great, glorious stories just in his head for however long. Remember, he's still young, the young six, right? He is quite literally grown up in an era which includes the main six. Think about that for a second. You got it, Act. Give me one moment. And yeah, even the Hearthwarming thing had the story of how I almost fell into the thing. Oh no. Gotta have his stories, right? Come on. History, Dungeon R. And Ratchet. Blank. Collection HD. Done! Thank you again very much. Really. Unlike some people, I understand that the little bits help. So thank you. Yeah, exactly. Just last episode, he was geeking out about Rockhoof. You're absolutely right. And yes, I do, Ross. Absolutely. So, this cuts to another of my favorite little tidbits. Silverstream. Silverstream's fear is not the absence. Her fear is the presence. Her fear is that nightmare terror world that used to live, that she grew up in, that she was alive for. She sees the Storm King, and she is worried. And in fact, I quote word for word, he's going to take away everything I love. And the way they talk to her, the way Gallus talks to her and tries to talk her through this, she is, yeah, this is PTSD, and she does a great job showcasing it. But, oh, is the music done? Oh god, we looped through the whole soundtrack. Hang on, let's loop back up to the top. You can tell I talked too much. No, not this one. This was too loud. Yeah, she immediately went back to a sea pony. Nice little visual storytelling there. And this is so Pinkie Pie. And I know, obviously, she is the Pinkie Pie comparison. But you'll notice how it's a comparison that makes sense. It's not just being done casually or because it's a checklist. It's because she has been through something horrifying. And her desperately trying to enjoy life is her dealing with that. That is how she copes. That is how she processes what she's been through. It's clear that it's the moment she sees the shadow of the Storm King, all of it's gone. All the joy, all the exuberance, it is vanished in an instant. Now, I hope to God none of you have been through that, but I have actually been through that myself in real life. To explain what I mean by that, something really horrible happens, but then it's done. And so it'll never happen again, but then it happens again. This point right here, the happens again, nothing in the world feels like that. Nothing. It is the worst feeling. I do not say that hyperbolically. So I was right there with Silverstream as she saw that, because instantly feared, instantly drops her attitude, and instantly wilts before it, and goes into a sea pony and hides behind a corner because, oh my god, I can't deal with that. How can you? Now, if you're paying attention, both Silverstream and Ocellus needed someone else to help them with it, which makes sense. But before we cover that, I want to share something here. Remember, she has lived in terror and nightmare her whole life until like the last year. Of course she's trying to desperately enjoy life, even if it's just something as simple as learning about plumbing. Because she chose that. She decided that. She wanted that, and so she can have that. That is her perfect revenge, as I like to call it. We've learned that together we're stronger than you, and now we're rid of you, so we're gonna soar through the sky and go on adventure and never give you another thought again, ever! And she's actually crying as she's saying it, too. That is revenge. I think it's poignant that Smolder and Gallus could have left the cave and didn't even really consider it. So, this leads to Ocellus. Oh, I agreed. It's beautiful. There's a reason I wrote that one down word for word so I could repeat it for you. So this leads to Ocellus. Ocellus is, of course, terrified about her past. Of course she is. But she didn't have an external oppressor. Not really. She had an internal oppressor. All the changelings did, because they were the stormtroopers. They were the oppressors. And she is afraid that she is the monster. That's why she appears as Queen Chrysalis. Maybe I am just a monster playing to be not exactly Raskor. And so it explains so much about her mentality too. Why she's shy, why she's hesitant, why she clings to her friends so much. Because she is so desperate to prove that she has, to quote her word for word, that she has changed from what they were. It does act. I don't know why they changed that order. The structure of this episode needs special moment. I've mentioned this briefly before, but let's really look at the structure of this. We have fairly surface level fears with Gallus and Smolder. Gallus is afraid of physical confinement. Smolder's afraid of mental confinement, that ostracization problem. Both face it, overcome it, and move forward so they can help the two who have much deeper-seated fears. The fear of the external monster and the fear of the internal monster. You terrified me. I swear I've changed. All of these, there's a beautiful fractal here. Now, Yona's doesn't quite fit into the pattern. She fits perfectly for a yak, don't mistake me. And it is perfect for her and perfect for her culture, the cultural fear, like I said. But all of this builds up to Sandbar. Sandbar, this whole time, has not managed to defend or defeat his fear. He's questioned it, but that's it. It is not until he is the end when he finally does it. This is, in fact, the only part of the episode I don't like. Sandbar just kind of overcomes his own fear on his own, which is fine, but it doesn't fit the rest of the pattern at all because, again, his fear is so complex, so nuanced, that they honestly just didn't have time to spend on it. And so they didn't. They spent all the time on the other people. So it's a nice moment, but it's like I said, it's one of the only dipping points in the quality of the episode. Which leads to the tree. Duh. Of course, they're going to use Twilight as the presence of the tree. Speaking as a creator who works in animation, that's exactly what I would do. We already have the sprites for Twilight. We already have the actress for Twilight, so there you go. We'll just use it in a different way like they did. It's cool. It's very well done. Moving on. And this leads to Cozy, who is now being very overtly manipulative. Now, I actually referenced this earlier, but this is the scene where Cozy starts laying her cards out. And if the young six were more experienced and more knowledgeable, they would probably pick up on this, but of course they are not. I mean, they didn't even pick up on her backhanded compliments earlier. So she absolutely fakes everything to push herself into that friendship circle, and then has and this whole time I'm writing notes about how this is going to build up to a big Cozy related episode where she's, you know, she needs to be taught stuff and blah, blah, blah. And then the final shot of the episode is her looking at the grate leading down to the tree. Oh. She really is a sociopath. Huh. Yeah, no evil smile. Just a normal smile. Because remember, that's not how a sociopath works. Yikes. That's terrifying. I am looking forward to seeing where that will go. Oh, no kidding, Lord Ham. I don't think she would have managed that at all. Especially since the tree has that kind of morphic, you decide what's in there thing. You know what I mean? Like, she says it, the tree says it itself. You know, you decided what was in there. I didn't decide that. Imagine what Cozy Glow would see down there. I'm terrified Imperial Star Destroyer. Older RPGs don't tend to fare well, and people usually yell at me when I review them, so... Yeah, I'm absolutely terrified to review Legend of Legaia. But I suppose we'll see once we get there. That's true, Dream Whisperer. Sandbar does ultimately accept that he's just a normal pony. But yeah, no, I think this is a purple episode, absolutely. This is a brilliantly constructed, brilliantly acted, brilliantly animated, very tight character piece, which delves deeply into multiple characters equally. Like, we get some really deep character stuff, at the very least, for Ocellus and for Silverstream. And we get some surface-level character stuff for Smolder and for Gallus and Yona. And yeah, we hit the culture points, we hit the backstory points, there's continuity. Like, this episode wouldn't exist without all of the backstory leading up to it. It's one of those episodes. Speaking of which, I'm actually going to call this one an arc episode. Not just because of the Cozy Glow thing, which can argue it, but because, again, this episode sits on the shoulders of many other episodes. And it so clearly has foreshadowing in it for the future. We know they're going to do something more with the tree being under the school, and we know they're going to do something more with Cozy Glow. And as an aside, the fact that the tree has roots there under the school makes perfect sense. The tree tends to seek out friendship and harmony in general, and that school is kind of all about that. And also, its roots are right over here where the castle is, and the school's right here. So it's not that, you know, it's not that far to go, right? So physically it makes sense, and metaphorically it makes sense. So yeah, no. Probably not Trathan. They probably would have mentioned that if they did. It did. I don't know what pronoun to use with the tree. It's a tree. Meanwhile, Gallus is like, ugh, a tree just taught us a lesson about friendship, didn't it? And now we have I mean, granted, the young six have been friends pretty much since they were first introduced, but just like the main six, this is the episode in which I think they have actually become friends. I think they've had the last 9+ months to actually work and deal and process, and they've had their first big problem that all friendships need to face. They've had their first disagreement. They've had their first fight, pushing themselves away from each other. And they renewed, like good friendships will. They renewed that friendship. Just like the Discord episode kind of did back for the main six, way back in Season 2. So how would I do Sandbar's resolution? If I'm being honest as a writer, like if we're in the writing room right now, and you're like, all right, and I want to do this for Sandbar, and I'm like, no. And you say, well, what do you do instead? I would think about it, and what I would do is I would have Sandbar's fear not be resolved. And I would save that for its own whole episode. Because I do think the theme and plot point of it's okay to be normal, and it's okay to not want to be normal, because we need to hit both of those points, is an entire episode's topic by itself, right? There's a lot of nuance and a lot of work and a lot of subtlety, so I would have Sandbar's plot not be resolved at all. I would have Sandbar just kind of be like, okay, hold up. maybe I should go get my friends. What, do you think you can't do it by yourself? Well, I didn't say that. I just said maybe I'd be better to do this with my friends. I mean, you two are friends, so I should have my friends with me too. We're not friends. We're Rainbow and Rarity. We don't like each other at all. Well, now hold on. That's not right. And you just have him kind of piece it together a little bit and not really resolve it. Right? Lol, Raskor. And then we come back to Sandbar in a future episode. Yeah, I think this is an easy purple. Which actually brings us to our second purple for Vogel. So he has two purples. I think, whoop, that's the wrong purple. There's so many purples on this stupid thing. It's actually technically pink because purple's hard to see on this stupid spreadsheet. So Mr. Vogel has two purples. Let's see if anybody has three. Because we actually have a few two purples. There we go. Josh Haber has 1, 2, 3, 5 purples. Megan McCarthy has 3. And Larson has 1 billion. So, yeah, it's Larson, Haber, McCarthy, and then all the 2s, which is Scott Sonneborn, Joanna Lewis, Christine Sonko, and Michael Vogel. That's true, Imperial Star Destroyer. And if they do follow through on this, I will rescind my negative comment. Next week, so yeah, let's talk about this really quick, because Ross just brought this up. So next week is a normal week, that's the 19th. And we're covering Sounds of Silence and Father Knows Beast, which again, I'm not reading any of the things, so I have no idea what's going on with that. I noticed that the end of Season 8 is actually the week after that. However, I think we're not going to do that. I think what we're going to do... Now, this I'm not sure about this. But either on the 26th or the 2nd, one of the two, we'll go ahead and cover the Christmas special that I'm going to have to sub for Netflix for a month to get. So that'll be either the 26th or the 2nd, and then the one we don't do it on, we will go ahead and finish up Season 8. That's the current plan. I guess that's it. The reason I'm kind of hesitant on it is because if, for example, so one thing they've done before in MLP is the episode right before the big two-parter at the end leads into the two-parter. So if Father Knows Beast directly leads into School Raise Part 1, we might go ahead and push out the Christmas special to the 2nd. But if it doesn't lead directly into it, we'll probably go ahead and slot it in there so that it's the Christmas Sunday. So. Really, Sean? Well, that's a good thing that we're gonna be able to... That really? I don't have any other way to watch it. It's not on anything else. I looked. Whatever. That might be the thing that pushes us to making it the first thing. I guess we'll figure it out. Whatever. One way or another, we're doing the Christmas special. Probably on the 26th, if that is true. I'll look into it. In Netflix, I swear to God. Anyways, I do hope you've enjoyed. I will, of course, be back Tuesday with more A Hat in Time. And otherwise, I will see you when I see you.